All right, welcome to AI Innovators Interview Series with special guest Brennan Woodruff.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, excellent. And my name is Neil Brown, Executive Director of the AI Leaders Council, and your host and moderator today. And with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our AI innovator, Brennan Woodruff, who is Director of Strategic Partnerships at mHUB, a tech incubator and accelerator for manufacturing. In addition, Brennan is Chicago co-lead for the AI Collective community and a deal partner for Boardy, a startup and VC connector. Brennan's prior roles included Uber, SoftBank's Vision Fund, KPMG, and his own generative AI startup, GoCharlie. At SoftBank's Vision Funds, he oversaw the deployment of 50 billion in capital across 100 plus growth stage AI companies. And Brennan was part of Uber's product finance team, playing a role in launching bikes, scooters, self-driving, self-flying, and Uber as a platform products. He was part of a team that drafted Uber's initial public offering, resulting in 8.1 billion in funds raised through the public markets. And Brennan is an active Indiana University Go Hoosiers alumni, where he earned his bachelor's and master's degrees. Brennan, welcome. I love your background, love your experience, and can't wait to get your perspective today.
Glad to be here. I think hearing that story read aloud explains a little bit of the crow's feet on my eyes and my forehead wrinkles, but
Oh
hard
boy.
earned, great, handsome things, right?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, but let me get my video going here. Okay, so let's get to our first question. Please tell us about mHUB and how mHUB as an incubator and accelerator plays in the AI category.
Yeah. So mHUB is a truly one of one place. I feel like as I've gotten older, I've just gained an appreciation for very unique establishments. And there's a lot of people that say they're like mHUB, but it's a crazy place. So the way we talk about it, it's a hard tech innovation center, but
Right.
really it's a bunch of different things in one. So at its foundational level, think if you were a mechanical or electrical engineer and you had an idea for a product, wouldn't it be great if you went to a WeWork that was specifically designed for you to be able to go from idea to prototype as fast as humanly possible for as cheap as humanly possible? That's effectively the incubator that we've built. So we have around 300 companies that work out of here, 1,500 members. But then on top of that, we said, these members need connection to capital, need connection to opportunity, need connection to customers. And so we built a product development firm called Hard Tech Development Services, where the community is vetted for technical skills and ultimately can deliver under NDA while the corporate keeps the intellectual property as a product development accelerant using that same facility that we use for the incubator. And then if that wasn't enough, we stood up a venture fund and we actually make venture investments into startups via our accelerator program. But we run those accelerators based on topics identified by our corporate partners, our industry funders. So we're really this spark in bringing together emerging technologies and industry to ultimately elevate and commercialize new solutions that help benefit humanity. We do that across manufacturing, energy, climate, and then medtech as well. So really crazy place. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. Reach out to me. I'll give you a tour. But you were talking a little bit about like, how do we play in the AI category? And so, you mentioned it, but I've spent the last decade of my career in AI or AI adjacent roles in some form or another, some in the physical world, some more software. But mHUB is a hard tech innovation center, so a different level of playing field, but it's actually, we're seeing AI make a lot of the areas that we focus on very sexy again. So if you think about the intersection of AI and energy, data centers are kind of that opportunity. So we actually are queuing up an accelerator focused on data centers as a platform for hardware innovation. So how do you make them more flexible? How do you reuse the heat? How do you more efficiently power? How do you more efficiently operate these things so that it's not taxing of the environment around it? And then when I'm starting to kick the tires on and really build some density around is physical AI. So physical AI is the term that NVIDIA keeps using for this. Whether or not the whole industry has accepted it, I'm starting to get into it, but like robotics is kind of what I originally thought, but more embodied AI is what you hear. But really bringing AI into the physical world. So the concept of physical AI is becoming all the rage in 2026. And so we're hoping to do an accelerator cohort around it, but also bring in the resources and teams and expertise necessary to make a play there as well. So that's really mHUB and then how we play in the AI category.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, I thought when you mentioned the word physical AI that you were probably going to talk about robotics, and when you just mentioned energy, I was like, okay, energy. I didn't put that together with data centers, but yeah, when you mentioned NVIDIA, it all made sense. So, and I would be. Oh, I do want to ask you just share a little bit about Boardy. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so Boardy is a really cool tool. It's if you're unfamiliar, so Boardy is basically a super connector. So I think that we had this first wave of AI tools that were AI making it a lot, making us a lot better and more efficient at the things that we do every single day, right? So Boardy was one of the first ones where I saw AI as a catalyst for organizing human. So if you think about Uber, Uber is actually an AI algorithm that matches people based on different parameters. And so
Right.
Boardy kind of does that, but it's all through a voice interface. So you basically call Boardy. Boardy takes information from you about who you'd like to meet, about the things that are interesting to you. And then on a weekly basis, you can have a call with Boardy, and Boardy will actually make connections based off of his own network. So it's this really cool AI tool with network effects that network keeps
Okay.
growing. And so the value of using that product keeps accruing to you and other users. But Boardy more recently has now stood up its own venture firm. And so it has the largest venture scout program on the planet. That's the deal partner role that I have. But really, it's a way for you to connect uh, startups that are looking to fundraise with a much more broad global network of investors. So I use Boardy to connect me with potential commercial opportunities. I was using Boardy when I was a founder to help me connect with fundraisers or interesting partners or customers. And now I'm using Boardy to help the startups at mHUB and in the larger Chicago tech ecosystem to be able to connect them with capital as well.
Okay. And I forgot to mention that
Yeah.
mHUB is in Chicago, Chicago based and all that. And I would
Yeah.
be remiss if I didn't ask about that reference to GoCharlie. So tell us just a little bit about
Yeah.
GoCharlie. Sure, our
Yeah.
audience wants to know.
So GoCharlie was really my coming out party for this AI play. I like to think I've created a decent brand around my knowledge of artificial intelligence, but basically back in 2021, I was working at SoftBank and decided what every San Francisco person seems to think, which is I'm going to start the next generational company. And so I had an idea for a music NFT platform, started researching money transmission laws, and immediately decided that was going to be way too hard early days. And so fraternity brother introduced me to some PhDs that were building what they called machine learning algorithms at the time, but was actually language models and generative AI before either of those terms were widely spread. So back in 2021, GPT-3 was available via API. So that was a precursor to ChatGPT. It was available via API in an invite-only fashion. And so we were early in the industry. Our plan was to develop models specifically for enterprise. But what we found is that enterprise didn't really understand the value of language models yet. And I would argue that they still don't. So GoCharlie first started out as where every AI app did back then, which was programmatic SEO. So writing long form content to engineer algorithms to land on your page using specific keywords and question answer skills. Killer use case, revenue driving, huge time savings. We then saw when ChatGPT got launched that that market probably wasn't going to be as fruitful as we initially thought because ChatGPT was free. It's hard to compete with free if you're not well
Yeah.
capitalized. We actually released the first commercial agent product back in 2023 and kind of rode that out. We did some interesting collaborations with SRI International on the multimodal model level. But ultimately, company decided to close down before I hopped into mHUB. But really great place to be early in this Gen AI craze. Kind of see the industry as it's come, but also see a lot of the same problems we were facing back in 2022 are still very present in 2026.
Wow. No, I'm glad you shared that with us. So
Yeah.
back to mHUB. It's focused
Yeah.
on manufacturing technology and what you call hard tech, which
Yeah.
sounds like the hardware, not the software,
Yeah.
and machine tools and 3D printers and all that stuff. What are
Yeah.
some of the most exciting opportunities for AI in the manufacturing area?
There's so much, right? And I think it's important with this question to always highlight that like AI is a much bigger field than just language models and Gen AI. Like there's so many more different approaches to AI, cognitive systems, world models are now becoming a big thing, diffusion models. So there's a lot, but I'll share the ones that I'm most particularly
Please.
intrigued by. So we talked a little bit about robotics, but what I think about is more autonomous operations. So how can you have systems that learn and adapt on the fly to let's call it like inconsistent patterns. So most like systems have been developed as a point solution for a very specific problem, and you set up your assembly line that way. Well, what if the assembly line could adapt to different things, enabling basically large or small batch customization at the economics of scale of large batch low customization. So I think adaptive kind of assembly lines and manufacturing is
Yeah.
a really cool spot. I still
Wow.
think based on the people that we've talked to, there's a huge opportunity just for smart retrofitting sensors. So really easy ways to stick something onto an existing piece of hardware to make it smart. Many factories don't even have the data feeds that they need to ultimately deploy more intelligent AI and digital twin software on top of it. So we're dealing with a very aged industrial base, and we need to get them up to speed. And the best way to do that is to give them easy to implement solutions that can provide the data feeds necessary to power this. And then I think the probably longer term interesting part about manufacturing is thinking through like, okay, do you have lights off facilities where you can do human labor during the day, and then during the 16 hours on the normal workday having a robot workforce, but then also how do we enhance existing human labor using exoskeletons and really smart hardware that's taking in information, taking in feeds, but then enabling humans, not so dissimilar to what we're doing with ChatGPT for white collar work, but doing that for blue collar work where we can effectively have superhumans that are able to move and shift and change things around using hardware that enhances their existing capabilities.
Wow.
Yeah, a
That's
lot.
that's amazing. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
So, you worked on one of the biggest tech startups in history, Uber, and
yeah.
so that was part of the tech startup phenomenon. So, how
Mhm.
would you compare the AI revolution to those tech startups that you worked with?
Yeah, this is something I go back and forth on quite a bit. If Are you familiar with Stratechery? It's like a tech blog.
No.
For anyone listening, or Neil as well, like Stratechery is awesome. So it's basically like industry deep dives on different topics, different industry trends.
Yeah.
And a lot of the top VCs read this. I was a subscriber for a while, even as a startup founder. Just it's really cool to see how he thinks about the industry. But why I bring this up is there's this penultimate piece that he wrote as Uber was approaching its IPO, and he made a distinct differentiation between tech and tech enabled.
Yeah.
And so the difference there was, traditional tech was thought of as like 80-90% margins. Like you build a thing and then you're just charging people for more seats. And so the margins are absurd. And those margins can be reinvested back in growth and R&D. And so they were a very attractive business because they had so much margin they could play with and basically fend off competition, but also cash flow machines that they could use there. And then they had infinite scale, right? So then he contrasted that with Uber, which he called tech enabled. And so Uber it had like maybe 15 to 20% margin at that point in time, and in many cases was underwater on a bunch of trips. And so he
Mm.
made the differentiation that basically Uber was, I'm probably butchering this and paraphrasing, but that Uber was basically, it was tech, but it was a service that was already existing, but using tech expanded the market, but didn't have the traditional tech margins. And so we felt that that was going to be an issue for Uber. Why I mentioned this is like, we're now in that space of like AI and like what is tech, and AI I think is just part of that technology trend. If you look at the actual margins on a token, if you didn't have to invest in building new models, like you can get to 80-90% pretty quickly. And so I think we're just going back to like more efficient technology, but it takes pieces from this tech enabled sort of perspective, in that by making intelligence available via like via an API or via an app, you actually expand the market for software. So now people are building more software than they ever have before. They're building it quicker than they ever have before. And I think the opportunity for where software can be put into place is bigger than it ever was before, because it's so cheap to make software now. So it's that Javon's paradox argument that everybody has. So I think this AI revolution, we're just getting started. It's already everywhere, but like I really think that we're in the very early days, because as this stuff gets cheaper, the amount of use cases that become available for us to look at for this stuff become pretty endless. And then we'll be able to apply it to much, much harder problems that require long horizon running compute. And I think it'll be even bigger. So I actually think that we are under appreciating the midst of what we are in right now. And then you have quantum kind of on the tail end of this, which I think will take it to a whole nother level.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Exciting times, man.
Yeah. So tech enabled. And so all these people that are saying there's no ROI in AI and stuff yet, that they're spending money and haven't seen the ROI yet. You could say tech enabled and low margin and high payoff over time.
Yeah.
And maybe
I
you
would say
mentioned,
that
yeah, go ahead.
I would,
You
I
would?
would say that particular issue is kind of from my personal opinion, having to sell these products into enterprises and talk to enterprises about things. Um, I would argue that not getting ROI is a matter of failing to have a better sense of what key priorities are, and then breaking that down into tasks, and then breaking that down into what's manual and highest value. I think there's a process and a framework that you can implement AI where it's almost reasonably assured that you're going to get to some sort of ROI. The bigger problem I found with ROI discussions is that most organizations don't track the amount of time that a task takes for anything that's not sales related. So operationally,
Okay.
there's like processes, but no one's tracking how long it takes to do that for you to then be able to say, okay, I did it in a tenth of the time, and you got X amount. So it all boils back down to, is it increasing my revenues or is it decreasing my costs? And if you can't say what those are right now, it's hard to really evaluate against it. So I think there's
Yeah.
too many smart people that are coming at AI from a I need AI perspective, instead of saying, this is my business. How can AI make me better at that business, more efficient at that business, or create a new business for me?
Yeah. I like that.
Sorry, that was my soapbox that I got on because I had to deal with so many people that were like, oh, yeah, AI, it'll just improve itself, right? And like, what's your
Yeah.
innovation strategy? It's AI. I'm like, that's not a strategy.
Neat.
Yeah.
So tell us about how you use AI just in your daily work routines, maybe even your personal routines. How do you use AI?
You know what's pretty interesting to me, Neil, is that prior to prior to deep research coming out, um, with Google Gemini first and then ChatGPT, I didn't really use AI all that much. Like I like to write, I like to write content, I like to put it out there, and that's pretty much all these things were good at. For a while was just writing, and to be honest, it was very salesy because it was trained on internet data that was engineered to be salesy. Um,
Yeah.
so then when deep research came out, I started to see the light. I started using it a lot more. So I was coming from AI land into hard tech land. I had to learn new industries. I had to learn new topics. I had to learn all sorts of concepts and acronyms that I never heard. So for me, it was a learning curve accelerant. But then I use deep research because my role here is effectively sales and industry partnerships. And so for me, it was okay, this is what I think is the right topic that we should be focused on for the next accelerator. Why or why not should we focus on this? Okay, great. Take that information, come back, work back and forth a little bit, and then I'd say, can you give me 125 companies that you think would be relevant for this? And they would give me 125 companies. And then I'd use that to go find individuals at those companies. And then I'd use that to craft very specific outreach based upon the research that I had done about that company and what the opportunity set was in that space for them. And then I'd use it to ultimately, I wouldn't send it out via ChatGPT, but use it as that like first layer of identifying the right companies, identifying the right people, and then using it as a way to get out the door to those people. So for me, the second piece was just opportunity identification and learning in industry. And then I think the third piece, which is far more surprising to me that many people haven't experienced this, is voice mode. So have you used voice mode, Neil?
No, but my colleagues do.
Yeah. So like voice mode's wild. It's the thing that will make you feel like Tony Stark if you want to feel that way when using AI. But effectively, you can go back and forth in voice mode and it'll talk to you. But there's a very technical concept that I was talking to with someone about nuclear, and then I wanted to contrast that with the hydrogen energy space because a lot of venture in hydrogen had dried up. And so I was trying to compare and contrast why we would be caring about new nuclear versus, getting hydrogen solved. There's already a lot of money there. And I was able to go back and forth and like bring me up to speed on the industry, how it got to that space, and then help me learn why people were emphasizing nuclear versus hydrogen, which it's somewhat apparent, but you got to get a little bit more technical than that. So using voice mode is kind of that like assist rather than me having to type anything in my phone or being able to have longer conversations. It's almost like you're asking your smartest friend in that space all the stupid questions you don't want to ask everybody else.
Yeah, what do they call it? Your AI double, your AI twin.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now the images have gotten pretty good that it generates. So like I use that for mocking up visuals for slide decks or proposals, or I'm planning a wedding right now. So I like to mock up the wedding scene and what that's going to look like as well. But it's been pretty great.
Wow, that's great. Um, well, why don't you share one piece of advice or wisdom for our AI leaders audience about more effective AI adoption or implementation?
Yeah. So I think if I was a leader in an organization, I think you have to you have to give people the space to experiment, and you have to give a framework for people to operate within to try to think about implementing this stuff. So a company that I greatly admire called Zapier. Zapier does like very fancy, easy integrations and automation that's a little bit more drag and drop. But when ChatGPT came out and the AI craze started, they took 2 weeks as a company. And for 2 weeks, they had everybody use this tool. They did a session on like its shortcomings, what it can do, what it can't do. And then they had a framework that everybody used to apply it to their actual day-to-day work. And people applied it to their day-to-day work to identify what are some of the things that we could use AI for. They came up with a list of like 100 different use cases. And then they just blasted through those use cases to see which ones they would implement AI and which ones they wouldn't. Now, I think the important part there is like you probably need a little bit of technical capability there, because building a custom solution for a very specific custom use case in your organization is going to require some tech skill. But if you're just giving people chat GPT and saying like, that's it, figure it out, you might be a little bit too restrictive. Now, chat GPT is an amazing tool, but it really depends on what problem are you trying to solve. Are you trying to like automate an entire workflow? Are you trying to make something 50% faster? Are you just trying to make people more efficient in their day to day and hopefully accelerate their output? So space for experimentation and time for people to actually experiment in a framework for them to operate in would be my big piece of advice for anyone looking for their
Wow,
organization to adopt.
love it.
Yeah.
Great stuff, Brennan.
Yeah.
I'm glad you found us and reached out to us. And thank you for all these extraordinary insights today. Great success to you. And on behalf of the AI Leaders Council, we look forward to future collaboration.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Great. All right. Thank you, Brennan. Have a great one.
See you now.